All right, I want to thank all of you for joining us here today. And I do want to start by keeping in our thoughts and prayers the family and loved ones of the 3 fallen firefighters who gave their lives to protect our community. I know the mayor and all of our colleagues here share that view and extend our condolences. We also extend our prayers and best wishes for a full recovery for firefighter John McMaster. Today, we're here to discuss important new safety measures that we're putting in place at the federal level to help protect our public servants, our transit workers, who have been on the front lines every day during the pandemic, helping people get where they need to go in Baltimore, in Maryland, and around the country. And I want to introduce here, and you're going to be hearing from them in a minute, the president of ATU Local 1300, Mike McMillan, who's right here. Thank you for your leadership. To the president of ATU Local 689, Raymond Jackson. Thank you for your leadership. To the mayor, Brandon Scott. Thank you for your leadership on so many important issues for this great city. To Councilman Ryan Dorsey, thank you for all that you're doing and for being here today. To my colleague in the House side, John Sarbanes, who's been working on many issues, including transit and transportation. Thank you for your leadership. Our colleagues, Congressman Mfume and Congressman Rupersberger, have also been very active. They could not join us today. But I am very pleased that the captain of Team Federal Maryland, Ben Cardin, is with us. And thank you, Ben, Senator Cardin, for all your work. We're also going to hear from Darlene Knox, a transit worker of 20 years who is going to share her story about the challenges and safety risks that transit workers undergo every day in doing their jobs. And I want to thank all the ATU members who are here today who make this city run. And we need to be there for you to make sure you have the resources and protection that you need. Now, we were successful at the federal level in passing the Infrastructure Modernization Bill, and President Biden signed that into law last November. And my colleagues here, Senator Cardin and Congressman Sarbanes, were at the front of that effort to get that done. That legislation will bring $7 billion in infrastructure modernization money to Maryland over the next 5 years, and we'll invest a lot of it here in the Baltimore area. It also represented an historic increase in funds for transit, the largest increase in funding for transit ever in a United States federal government infrastructure bill, including $1.8 billion that will come to Maryland over the next 5 years for transit. And I want to thank all of the people here and all of our transit workers and my colleagues for getting that important bill over the finish line. But we wanted to make sure that as we provided that additional investment in transit and infrastructure, we would also take measures to help not only keep the systems running, but help increase the safety of the men and women who go to work every day on those transit systems. And I want to talk a little bit about how important that is. In October of 2020, Marcus Parks was fatally shot after someone got in an argument with him as they boarded his Southeast Baltimore bus route. Last January, about a year ago, Frankie Duckett was shot and killed in Northeast Baltimore after he asked somebody boarding the bus to put on a face mask. Just last August, Baltimore City lost MTA bus driver Isaac Caldwell, who was shot while waiting to get to work. These are Marylanders who were going about their jobs, doing what we ask them to do every day to try to get people to and from their homes, to and from work, and they were killed in their line of duty. And our hearts go out to them and their families to this day. In addition to those who've been killed, there are others who were assaulted. This is a huge issue, an epidemic around the country. And if you look at the statistics, you'll find that every day throughout the United States of America, in urban areas and rural areas and suburban areas, transit workers are assaulted. And so as part of the infrastructure bill, we took measures to try to change that, to improve the security of our transit workers. Back in 2018, I worked with colleagues on a bipartisan basis to introduce a bill to improve transit worker safety. And with my colleagues, Senator Cardin and Congressman Sarbanes and others, we were able to get that measure included in the infrastructure modernization bill. What it says is that for cities like Baltimore, of over 200,000 people, when they get their federal transit money, they have to allocate a certain amount of those funds to increasing the safety of their transit workers. For example, they can put up protective barriers in buses, or they can work on de-escalation training. There's flexibility in exactly what measures they take, but it has to be designed to help improve safety. And it also would allow them to take measures to improve the visibility out of the windshields to protect pedestrian safety. So pedestrian safety and transit worker safety, those are both measures that these funds can be used for, set aside for. We also call in this legislation for more reporting, because assaults on transit workers are underreported across the country. Let me just give you some examples of things that do not trigger a reporting requirement right now. A transit worker can get a broken nose. A transit worker can be hospitalized for 24 hours. A transit worker can get first-degree burns, and none of those assaults, something we would all understand as an assault, are required to be reported under the current FTA rules. So we need to collect the data so that we can take additional measures and use those monies I talked about in a smart, targeted way to improve transit safety, because nobody should have to go to work and be put at risk in this way. And one of the other things we included in this infrastructure bill, and we again worked very closely on this as a delegation, was a provision to put the Baltimore Red Line back into play. We wanted to make it clear that we're not giving up on the Red Line, and in Maryland, with a future governor and a future General Assembly, we signaled in this bill that we're going to renew that effort. And that, of course, will mean additional transit workers, and the measures we're taking for transit worker safety are really important to protect them and people around the country. Now let me call up and somebody who's been working on these issues for a very long time. He is the chair of the Transportation Subcommittee on the Environment and Public Works Committee in the United States Senate, and that's Ben Cardin. So Ben, Senator Cardin, please come up, and thank you for all your good work.
First, let me thank and congratulate Senator Van Hollen. He holds key assignments in the United States Senate. He serves on the Appropriations Committee. He serves on the Authorizing Committee for Transit Policy in this country. But what makes Senator Van Hollen unique is how he uses those positions to help the people of Maryland. And that couldn't be more clear than why we're here today to deal with transit worker safety. It was his initiative through legislation, his working with members of the Senate and House, got it included in the infrastructure bill, and is now the policy of our nation. Congratulations, Senator Van Hollen, for this achievement. Mayor Scott, I want to join with Senator Van Hollen and all of us to express our deepest condolences on the loss of our firefighters. They're our frontline workers, and we know that they always put themselves at risk. And sometimes we just don't really appreciate the risk factors that they are doing. While we run away from danger, they run to danger. And we've seen during COVID-19 and this pandemic, We've seen that our frontline workers, which includes our transit workers that are out there every day, putting themselves at risk. Yes, they're at risk because of the public health areas, and we know that during COVID-19, and yet they showed up in order to make sure that everyone else could get to where they needed to be, including our healthcare workers. And we say thank you, but we need to say thank you by helping keeping you safe. And the funds that we're talking about, people do things that are dangerous, and transit workers are subjected to that type of conduct. As Senator Van Hollen said, 3 lost their lives in Maryland, in Baltimore in the last about 15 months. So we needed to take action in order to deal with it. Senator Van Hollen mentioned the bipartisan infrastructure package. I want to acknowledge that Congressman Sarbanes played a critical role in his committee assignment and the work that he did in the House of Representatives to put together that infrastructure package. This truly has been Team Maryland working to make this done. And we have provided billions of dollars of help for our roads and our bridges and our transportation infrastructure. But what we're particularly proud, with the leadership of President Biden, with the leadership of our delegation, we made sure that there were justice issues dealt with in the infrastructure bill. And yes, the red line should have never been canceled. We wanted to see that done. We kept that alive. Highway communities have been divided, as we know, along the Franklin-Mulberry corridor in Baltimore, where the transportation has divided communities rather than helped communities. We were able to get money in the infrastructure bill to bring communities back together, funds directly for this. And then Senator Van Hollen's initiative on transit safety issues. This is critically important. But you know what I like about your bill and what we did? We're going to include the transit workers' representatives in developing the plan to keep our transit workers safe. It's not going to be from the bureaucracy down. It's going to be from the workers involved, so that we include the workers in making decisions on how to keep them safe. So I'm just proud to be part of Team Maryland. I'm proud of what we've been able to do. To Councilman Dorsey, thank you for your leadership in the City Council. To our union representatives, thank you for being there always to protect the rights of workers and our families, and to make sure that we do what's right in policies for this critically important service to our community. I'm proud to represent you in the Senate, and again, congratulations to my colleague in getting this done.
Thank you. Thank you to Senator Cardin. And now, as Senator Cardin and I both said, we had a great team player in the House who led the way there, along with other members of the Baltimore area congressional delegation, John Sarbanes. Congressman Sarbanes.
Thank you. Thanks, Senator Van Hollen. Mayor Scott, it's been a tough week for the citizens of Baltimore. Our hearts go out to the families that have been affected by these tragedies. This is about solidarity with our transit workers here in Baltimore and Maryland, across the country, because it's a tough job. It's a very high-stress job. We know from surveys that transit workers are on the front line every day. Certainly over the last couple of years, it's been particularly tough, but it's a high-stress job to begin with. You then add into the mix the risks that have been discussed here today, the danger in the job, and it's important to put these critical measures in place to protect our transit workers, which is exactly what this legislation is all about. I want to thank Senator Cardin and our delegation for their leadership, but in particular, I have to salute Senator Van Hollen. Stuff doesn't just happen in Washington. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of focus and determination, showing up every day with a set of priorities. And Senator Van Hollen, across so many different arenas, has demonstrated his commitment to important priorities, but certainly this is one of them, standing with our transit workers. He introduced the legislation originally. He kept focused on it to make sure that it would be included in legislation that actually got passed in the House and the Senate and was signed into law by the President of the United States. So this didn't just happen. This happened because Senator Van Hollen made it a priority. And he did that on behalf of transit workers. He did that on behalf of the leadership of the transit unions that are standing behind us. And I want to thank him for that effort, his leadership in this space and in so many other things that matter to Baltimoreans, matter to Marylanders, and matter to people across this country. Senator Van Hollen, thank you for your leadership on this. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Sarbanes, for all your efforts in this area, protecting our democracy and so much else. And now it's a great honor to bring up somebody who's been leading this city, leading it forward, and having to address the challenges as well as the tragedies that we just experienced with respect to our lost firefighters. Mayor Scott.
Thank you, Senator, and good morning. And let me first start off by saying thank you to the entire federal delegation and entire federal government for your support for our city, for our fire department, for their families over the last couple of days. It has been a tough time for us. But I am so proud to be here with this great group of partners, with our wonderful, wonderful friends from ATU who are wonderful frontline workers, and it's even more special for me to be back here at the Mondawmin station as a young man where I caught the M3, the 22, the subway, of course. I don't know these newfangled, I know the old numbers, I'm sorry, y'all, to be here to talk about this. These workers are great, and they help us get to and fro each and every day across Baltimore to make sure that our city and our state keeps moving. I often say and said to every mayor in the country last week in D.C. that I am blessed to have the best federal delegation that a mayor can find. So thank you, Senator Van Hollen, Senator Cardin, Congressman Sarbanes, and Congressman Mfume and Rupersberger for being the best federal delegation and always keeping Baltimore at top of mind of not just your mind, but your actions on what you're doing to improve our great city. I'm excited to celebrate the passage of this. This is about making sure that these workers remain safe and that we do reporting. It's imperative that we be proactive and not just reactive in the defense of our frontline workers. They are the lifeblood of our city and deserve to be protected, but also respected in a much deeper way, especially when they are conducting their essential duties for residents who rely on transit workers to get them where they need to go. Our labor partners have been staunch advocates for worker safety, elevating the needs and rights of transit workers across the board. It is our responsibility as elected officials to support these efforts and insist transit agencies are held accountable in the transparent reporting of safety data, as well in their partnership with frontline workers to develop safety plans that account for the growing workplace violence trends. We heard about the violence incidents that we had, unfortunately, for folks' lives were lost, but so many others are done in assaults and spitting and all these other things that happen to our transit workers, and people deserve to know, and we have to do better at protecting them. We are proud to be here. I am proud to be here to usher in regulations that will have frontline workers and representatives of frontline workers, experts, and law enforcement professionals all on board. We are here, and I am here to say we hear your concerns and need, and I am committed to working to protect our frontline essential workers. Again, I want to congratulate our local and national ATU leaders, transit workers, and Maryland representatives for being here to speak on this much important and needed action that we have here today. But I also want to go back to something that the senators and the congressman brought up about the red line and bringing it back, as this is election season. If you're running for statewide office or thinking for running for statewide office in Baltimore, if you are running for any single solitary office that impacts the city of Baltimore going into this election season, if you are not for bringing back the red line and not committed to saying that you want to do that right now, don't waste your time. Come and talk to me. Our communities deserve 21st century transit. We deserve to have the work that this great delegation has laid to go forward and push it through the state, because we need another subway line in Baltimore. Thank you.
All right. Amen to that in the red line. And we were very pleased to be able to put that back on the books in Washington, D.C., and look forward to a partner in Maryland that we can move forward with on that important project. And I do want to thank Councilmember Dorsey again for being such an important part of this whole effort going forward. Now we're going to hear from the leaders of the great unions who represent these workers here, starting with Mike McMillan, who is the president of Local 1300. Mike, thank you for your leadership.
Well, thanks everyone for coming out. First of all, I want to recognize our frontline workers, our transit employees of the ATU, our membership. We want to recognize them for the work that they are doing during the crucial times that we live here in Baltimore City. Way before Marcus Park, one of our beloved members who was killed while on active duty as a bus operator. Way before, as you will hear later, Miss Darlene Knox, before she was assaulted as an operator and a station attendant. Passengers and transit workers alike, assaults have been occurring. But with the passage and the help from the delegation that we have, these things will stop, and they have to stop now. Whether you're a sitting representative in the U.S. Congress, or whether you're sitting behind the bus, a station booth, or sitting on the bus as a transit passenger, you should feel safe and protected on public transportation. The one thing that we all have in common is the air we breathe that gives us life, that makes us human. And I think that those who have stepped up, from Senator Van Hollen, Cardin, Congressman Sarbanes, and the Mayor Scott, they realize that. They realize the humanity of what's being done to our transit operators. So we thank them for that passage of the legislation that will help us to be able to finally get things done to protect workers and the riding public. Also, too, our President Costa of our ATU International, he has spearheaded this work of helping this legislation get passed. So we want to thank our ATU International President John Costa for the work that he has put, the tireless work that he and his team has put during in helping get this legislation passed. So once again, we say thank you on behalf of all the ATU members here in Maryland. And Senator Hollen, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you, President McMillan. And you're right, this was an effort at the local, state, and federal level. And I want to thank all the ATU leadership. And speaking of ATU leadership, we're now going to hear from the president of Local 689, President Raymond Jackson. All right.
Good afternoon. First, I want to thank Senator Van Hollen, Senator Ben Cardin, Congressman Sarbanes, and Mayor Scott for having me out here. And I had this great speech put together, but I think I'm going to set it aside. I'm going to speak to you all from my heart. The Transit Work Pedestrian Safety Act. One of the greatest leaders of the ATU, Larry Handley, rest his soul, and international president, once said that this act makes sense. It's common sense. When we speak of transit workers in this country, not just in this region, we never refer to them as frontline employees, essential workers. When you speak about a firefighter, a police officer, you speak of essential workers. We are the essential workers who have been on the front line in this pandemic since day one. My members, Mike McMillan members, every day we go to work scared of this pandemic, this virus that we may bring home to our families and our loved ones. But we get up every day and we go to work. But there's another threat out there that no one even mentions, and it's the assault on transit workers. This in the suburbs of Maryland, where I represent over 16,000 members, Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. But just in the suburbs of Maryland in 2020, we went from 12 bus operator assaults to 2021 having 26 bus operator assaults. We went from 0 train operator assaults in 2020 to 6 train operator assaults in 2021. We went from 0 station manager operator assaults to 6 operator assaults in 21. So what we're seeing is these numbers are rising and now people are being assaulted. And again, I want to thank the great people behind me for getting up every day and taking your family members, as well as mine, to work. And I'm gonna be brief, but I want to tell you a story that was just told to me by one of my board members. We have a department called AFC technicians. They're the technicians who work on the fare card machines where you pay your fare. The technician told my executive board member to tell me this, that he is more fearful of being assaulted in the system than he is of the pandemic, than he is of this virus. So please, let's get together. Let's pass this. Let's give these senators and these congressmen and this mayor the support that they need, because at 689 and in the ATU, we have this saying, and this is it. Who moved this city?
We moved this city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for moving the city, and as you said, in addition to all the risks from the pandemic, you've also got the ongoing risks of assault. And I can assure you that now that we've passed this legislation, we are going to be reaching out to you and all of your members to get their input for what safety measures make the most sense for all of you. And now we're going to hear from somebody who experienced firsthand the challenges and risks that go with helping move this city every day. Darlene Knox.
Good afternoon. I have been an MTA operator for more than 20 years. Thank you. I love my job. I love what I do. When I started, I never thought I would have to come and fear for my life. As an operator, I have been verbally and physically assaulted on more than one occasion. I was hit with a metal object. Then, a double assault took place. I was knocked down to the ground, which I got up, and I tried to call for help. I am currently dealing with a situation here at work that threatens my life. I have to work to earn a living. While at work, I shouldn't have to fight to stay safe for my life. I shouldn't have to fight to stay alive. We need help, and we need help now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Darlene Knox, and thank all of you. Let's give a round of applause to all the transit workers who are here, for helping our city, our state, and our country move. Now we're happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Sure. I have a question.
Yeah.
Senator. So I know this is something that's people are really happy about. But it did take quite a long time for the wheels of the legislative process to get moving. What is coming to Baltimore right now to help with the current issues with violence? Even though this help is needed, is there a way to get relief like this, anti-violence measures and safety measures, to get it on the ground faster?
Right. So a couple things. The monies from the infrastructure bill have already begun to flow to Maryland, and they will quickly make their way to Baltimore City. We're going to be working with the mayor and the council member here and others to make sure that happens. The bridge monies have started coming, the road money's coming, the transit money will be coming next, but this piece on the safety, we're going to begin work right now to implement the changes and get recommendations from the union leaders, from the members here, and Congressman Sarbanes, Senator Cardin, and I will be working with the federal folks at the Federal Transit Administration to begin to put in place these safety measures for transit workers.
So there doesn't have to be a wait time for
not to begin the process that we're talking about in terms of the kinds of measures that we want to put in place for safety. As I said, what the legislation does is requires that when those federal transit dollars come to the state and to the city, that those monies can be then used to implement these safety programs. But there's nothing stopping us from beginning the work right now.
And Mayor, if I could have you weigh in on that. I know that the murders tend to get the big headlines, but I know violence of any kind is a concern of
Yeah, no, listen, in violence of any kind, but especially violence against people who are literally helping everyone to get where they need to be. And it's an important thing, and like you said, the senator said we're going to be working with them in the state as a pass down to make sure that these things happen as quickly as possible. And we're going to continue to work with our federal delegation, as they are great, on all violence and helping us here with federal resources and others. It's unacceptable that it happens to anyone, especially these folks who are taking our children to school, who are getting us to the doctors, who are getting us to work, who are getting us to everywhere that we need to go. We can't take it, and we won't accept that it happens, and these things will be put in place as quickly as we can.
I have one more question if no one else has a question. Senator Van Hollen, this is for you. I don't know if you just saw the breaking news that Justice Breyer announced he's retiring, and there's already talk of Mitch McConnell blocked this and that. I'm wondering if you could weigh in on your thoughts on that and what you think the nomination process could be like?
Sure. Well, first, let me say again to all of our colleagues gathered here, thank you for what you're doing to get people to and from work, and we're going to do everything we can to make it easier and safer for you to do that. I don't know if anybody heard the news. Just as I was coming up here, we heard the news that Justice Breyer was going to be stepping down. It's very important that the process move forward quickly. I'm confident that President Biden will make a nomination quickly. It's very important that the Senate then act on that because, look, we saw with the last opening, Senator Mitch McConnell rush through a nomination that occurred just months before an election. Here we have ample time. And it's really important that we move forward. I do want to take this opportunity to thank Justice Breyer. He's been a justice that really understands the principles behind our Constitution, the importance of protecting the rights of every American, and issues of equality and justice for all. So he has really, I think, been an outstanding Supreme Court justice, and we look forward to President Biden nominating somebody who has the same sort of core values that Justice Breyer has brought to the job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would like to hear some of the specific ideas that have come from the transit workers, if any of those have been discussed by y'all.
Well, I can say that we have had conversation with Holly Arnold, the administrator of the MTA here in Maryland. We are setting up a joint committee with MTA, which involves their police task force, which we will have the ideas from our members who are the frontline workers, who are actually coming up with the ideas on what needs to be done in order to protect them better. So we are scheduling and have scheduled for these meetings to take place jointly.
Thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you.